CrowdStrike stock is making news today, but not for the right reasons. The stock is down almost 13% in pre-market trading after they caused a widespread outage on many Windows devices around the globe. So today we're going to look at what happened and if this dip makes a nice buying opportunity. Because if you know anything about CrowdStrike, you know that their performance has just been amazing. Look, it more than doubled in the past year, and their performance has just been astounding, up 4 times since their IPO in 2019. So I used to own CrowdStrike, but I sold it because I was concerned about the valuation. So I'm very interested in looking into what happened today to see if this might be a good opportunity to get back in. So I honestly couldn't go to any news site today without hearing about this major cybersecurity outage. Bloomberg calls it an unprecedented IT outage that cripples businesses around the globe. I'm not sure if that's just clickbait, but essentially, CrowdStrike customers using Windows devices experienced the BSOD, or blue screen of death, when they tried to use their devices last night and potentially this morning as well. And apparently this outage hit many businesses, from banks to healthcare systems to airlines, all of which are very important to our economy and to our society. These types of things, you really don't want to see an outage even for a little bit of time, because they're dealing with people's lives and with people's money. So a healthcare system not being able to use their computers even for an hour, that's not a good thing. Same thing with airlines. People have places to be, very time-sensitive schedules. Airlines' computers going down, not good. Banks' computers going down, not good. People need to access their money. So these are all very important institutions that rely on CrowdStrike solutions. So let's quickly talk about what CrowdStrike does, how this outage happened, and what they're doing to fix it. So CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company, and they're a leader, according to Gartner, in endpoint security. On the left here, they compete with Microsoft mainly, but other smaller companies like SentinelOne. They also somewhat compete with Palo Alto Networks, which is a bit more diversified, but does have endpoint security offerings. Essentially, endpoint security is the security of an endpoint. So a device that a company or a person uses. So like your personal laptop, your work laptop, your company phone, those types of things which may hold sensitive data. You want to protect those things and make sure that bad actors can't get into them. So the 5 components of endpoint security are device protection, network control, application control, data control, and browser protection. So it's more than just a firewall. It truly is thorough protection for your devices. So going back to CrowdStrike, they are the leader in endpoint security. They have a massive, almost $100 billion market cap, might be a little bit lower today. And like I said, they compete against Microsoft, but they claim to have an edge against Microsoft. They claim that when Microsoft customers have a breach, most of the time it's because of Microsoft's own firewall. So they like to just kind of brag and say that they are better than Microsoft in that regard. It's kind of a CrowdStrike's word against Microsoft's word. They also are a leader in cloud workload security, competing against rival Palo Alto Networks. And they are also in this leader segment of risk-based vulnerability management platforms. And they compete with companies like Tenable, which are a bit more specialized, a bit more niche. So that's a bit about what CrowdStrike does. Let's find out what caused this outage today. Apparently, there was actually an announcement made on CrowdStrike's website, but you need to be a CrowdStrike customer in order to access it. If I click this link that was posted on Reddit, it takes me to sort of a paywall where I need to log in as a Falcon, which is CrowdStrike's platform customer. So I can't actually see the alert, but this kind Redditor posted the verbiage from it. They said, "Hello everyone, we have widespread reports of BSODs, which is blue screen of death, on Windows hosts. Investigating cause. TA will be published shortly." And this was yesterday evening about 10 p.m. Pacific, which would have been about 1 a.m. in Eastern time. We see that the CEO, whose name is George Kurtz, posted on X just this morning at about 6 a.m., he said CrowdStrike is actively working with customers impacted by a defect found in a single content update for Windows hosts. Mac and Linux hosts are not impacted. This is not a security incident or cyber attack. The issue has been identified, isolated, and a fix has been deployed. We refer customers to the support portal for the latest updates and will continue to provide complete and continuous updates on our website. Okay, so that's a pretty nice PR, very corporate speak, very formal, but essentially around 6 a.m., the fix has been deployed. And if we're to believe this Redditor, the issue was first identified at 10:30 Pacific, which, like I said, would be 1:30 a.m. So from about 1:30 to 5:45, so about 4 hours and 15 minutes, CrowdStrike's customers with Windows devices were not able to use their platforms for those 4 or so hours. So that's definitely not insignificant. If we look at some of the millions of articles that have been posted about this, travel, banking, and businesses hit after software bug causes worldwide IT chaos. Microsoft Windows IT outage, U.S. Airlines, 911 service services and businesses hit by CrowdStrike disruption. Here's a little picture of the blue screen of death that people were running into. CrowdStrike oopsie crashes Windows workstations across the world. CrowdStrike issue causes major outage affecting businesses around the world. CrowdStrike code update bricking Windows machines around the world. Falcon sensor putting hosts into death loop, but there's a workaround. Okay, so I think we can understand the severity of this. It's not just a small thing. It really did affect businesses that are crucial to our society, and CrowdStrike is to blame no matter how you look at it. So obviously that's not great, and I think it remains to be seen what the actual economic impact is. I think that this happened so recently that it's hard to tell the backlash that's going to occur. I'm not sure if there are going to be lawsuits filed against CrowdStrike or if CrowdStrike is going to have to pay any kind of fines or reparations for what happened. I simply don't know. I'm not sure what happens in these situations. So what I'm simply going to do is analyze CrowdStrike's financials and see if it is worth a buy for those who have maybe a stomach for risk today. So this is my spreadsheet where I analyze growth stocks on 4 factors. Those factors are gross margins, annualized revenues, price to annualized sales, and growth, which I measure by quarterly year-over-year revenue growth. Out of all these factors, I assign companies a score. My average score is about 12, and CrowdStrike gets 11.5, so that's actually quite solid. All these companies on this list are what I believe to be, strong companies and disruptive companies, so CrowdStrike being just below average is not necessarily a bad thing. What I like about CrowdStrike financially is that they have amazing gross margins, being a SaaS-based business, which is software as a service. They do offer a cloud-based platform, and so their cost of revenues are actually quite low at just 25, leaving them with this 75% gross margin. They also have amazing growth that's somewhat accelerating. So they did grow 33% year over year in the last quarter. That's great because they actually have almost $4 billion in annualized revenue. So as their revenue grows and grows and grows, it's going to be harder to go out and find those customers that aren't already using their platform. So I would have expected growth to slow a lot by now, but it really hasn't. And I think that speaks to the strong demand that there is for cybersecurity solutions. So I think even though CrowdStrike did have a rare bug that caused these blue screens of death, even in very important institutions, I think people aren't just going to stop using CrowdStrike's Falcon platform. I think cybersecurity platforms, and especially CrowdStrike's, are very sticky, and I do think that their reputation will be slightly damaged by this event. However, they are a leader in cybersecurity, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, even with today's outage. One thing that I don't really like about CrowdStrike, and the reason I sold, is their valuation. On a price to annualized sales basis, they're trading at about 23 times. Now, after the 12% dip this morning, their market cap will be around 74 billion, so that'll put their price to annualized sales below 20. So that puts them a bit more in line with companies like perhaps Palantir or Intuitive Surgical, which I do believe are expensive, but when you have a company with amazing growth and amazing potential, oftentimes you're going to be paying a premium for that wonderful company. So at least a lot of that premium is being shaved off this morning. Another thing I like about CrowdStrike is that they do have a nice balance sheet. They have about $4 billion in cash and just over $4 billion in debt. So that's a nice strong balance sheet on just a very basic surface level. And they are a free cash flow generating machine like most software companies. Like I said, they don't have a lot of costs of revenue. So a lot of that revenue does hit the company as a gross profit. Of course, they have to pay their employees. They do have to advertise. They have to research. But at the end of the day, they do generate cash. And we can see that their cash flows from 2020, here's 2020, this very skinny bar, 2021, 22, 23, 24, they do a fiscal year, so that's why 2024 is already in here, have just gone through the roof. So I love to see that they are generating more and more cash year over year. So ultimately, we have a company that is a leader in endpoint security. It is a large, well-established, trusted company. They did have an issue today that caused a serious outage across the world. It did impact some really vital businesses, and that's not going to be good for CrowdStrike's reputation. They may have to end up paying fees and penalties for what happened. However, the outage is already fixed. Before I even heard about it, it was already fixed. So I think that is a really good thing that CrowdStrike was able to move so quickly and get this blue screen of death issue solved within 5 hours. I think that's really amazing that they did that. And I do think CrowdStrike might be a buy for a cautious investor to start dollar cost averaging in. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, so I wouldn't be surprised if the price does fall further. However, I also think as people digest the news and see that CrowdStrike is down, they may begin buying in again. So I think there's going to be a lot of volatility with CrowdStrike stock. Nobody's going to know exactly where the stock is going. If you are interested in buying this dip, I would buy it slowly, and that's probably what I will be doing as well to complement my Palo Alto Networks position. It would be nice to get a little bit more cybersecurity exposure because it is a huge market and it's a theme that I'm quite bullish on. So So I like to do the contrarian thing, and when everyone's selling, that's when I like to buy, and when everyone's buying, that's when I maybe like to trim. So to me, it might seem crazy, but I do like this dip today, even though this is a huge issue, and I do think CrowdStrike will have some backlash for it. I think that that is going to be reflected in the price, and I'll begin maybe dollar cost averaging today. If you are one of my YouTube members, you'll see if I end up buying the stock, I post my trades for my YouTube members. It's $1.99 a month. If you're interested, that's an awesome way to support the channel if you like it. But otherwise, thanks just so much for watching, and I hope you guys all just have an amazing day. Hope you don't see any blue screens of death.